Hi, I'm Tom from Nod to the Strange, and this is the first episode in a new series of retro game reviews. A while ago I was given this retro games controller, a mini console with 200 8-bit games built in. Growing up in the 90s with an Amiga 500, Super Nintendo and access to a friend's Master System, having 200 games back then would have seemed unbelievable. With today's access to millions of games on demand, this kind of gift could easily be dipped into and then tossed into a cupboard without further thought, so I decided why not try to give each of these 200 games a fair chance. It seems this thing's available around the world in various packaging, and other YouTubers have done short videos on it, but no one's attempted to review all 200 games yet. So let's get started with the first 5. Game 1 of 200 is F22. I think the title refers to a real-world fighter plane, but the title screen makes it look more like some kind of space sim. The first thing that strikes you is the music. Bizarrely, it sounds like it could have been ripped from a cute Japanese RPG like Harvest Moon rather than composed for a serious shooter about modern air combat. In-game, it's a top-down shooter. Your F22 flies over a landscape of desert islands adorned with little palm trees and oil rigs. Enemies fly in lines from the top of the screen. They don't shoot at you but try to ram you out of the sky while dazzling you with their synchronised flight patterns. There are also big gun turrets down below to watch out for. The planes can be dealt with quite easily, and you can grab power-ups to upgrade your firepower in ways like firing 2 missiles at once and adding 2 wingmen that fly alongside you. After beating the first boss, a bomber that fires heat seekers, things get a bit strange. You find yourself flying over some kind of volcanic landscape with what look like huge brown slugs firing glowing spheres at you. This nightmarish place is ruled over by the second boss, which appears to be the huge pink head of a praying mantis. I didn't quite know what to make of this, but it's possible the original game came with a manual that detailed a fantastically detailed sci-fi backstory. Maybe. Overall, it's pretty decent. Racing Fighter is an odd game. Despite the reference to racing in the title, you spend the entire game driving along a highway with suicidal enemy cars heading in your direction. Your job is to reach the checkpoint at the end of each level before running out of fuel, while shooting cars with a big cannon in the back of your Jeep. Like the planes in F22, the cars just drive right at you and try and kill both of you. You can blow them up with one shot, but you don't get much ammo, and after that you're on your own with no pickups except the occasional fuel barrel. Often there are so many enemies you won't stand a chance, which makes for frustrating gameplay until you use exploits like hugging the outside lane and only destroying anyone directly in front of you. This will get you to the end of the level, but it makes for quite a dull gameplay experience. You have to use one button to accelerate and the other to fire, which makes it pretty hard to do both at the same time. I know there are no triggers on the controller, but why didn't they just make accelerate up on the joystick? Imagine GTA was like this. There's some pretty nice pixel art in between playing, but that's not much consolation. There's no music during the levels, so you better enjoy the irritating drone of your engine, which sounds like the outtakes from a Kraftwerk song. Vanguard is the most polished and cohesive game so far. Another top-down view, this time of a tank rampaging through a military camp, softening it up for an army that never arrives. It certainly looks good. Oil drums, barricades and tents dot a landscape protected by other tanks and huge gun turrets. There's no on-screen interface, but it's not entirely needed. You have unlimited ammo but limited lives, so a life counter would have been useful. Your tank can aim and move only in 4 directions, but the enemies have access to 8. At first this seems primitive, but while playing you quickly realise it adds a tactical element like the limited movements of pieces of the board game. I got used to timing my movements to avoid the shots of enemy guns, daring them to fire at me, then moving out and hitting them with my gunfire. The game has 6 levels that are shown on a world map screen like the one from Doom. Admittedly, there's not much variation between them due to the limited number of enemy types. While fun and challenging, the gameplay remains at a constant level of intensity all the way through, with no lulls or heavily intense sections. As usual, it's got one piece of music that plays on a loop, and there's only so many times you'll want to hear it. Sound effects are nice and detailed, however. As you can see here, the final stage features a huge boss tank for you to destroy, except it doesn't. When you get to the end of stage 6, you just return to the title screen with no well done message or anything. We've had the best game so far, and now we've got the worst. Animal Blocks, or Blokes, is a very dull puzzle game. I was hoping for an animal-themed Tetris clone, but instead I got a set of playing pieces, small blocks with an animal's face on each one. These have to be matched as pairs by clicking on them with a pointer, which results in the pair disappearing. Once you've cleared all the pieces, the stage ends, leaving you with 9 more stages to get through. The animals themselves are quite well drawn and recognisable, but the gameplay is frustrating. At the start of each stage, lots of them can't be clicked, with no explanation why, so your strategy descends into simply clicking on each of them in turn until you find one that works. What's worse is that sometimes it ends abruptly with a game over screen, seemingly out of nowhere. There must be some way of painting yourself into a corner making it impossible to win, but I couldn't figure out what it was. It's just a pair-matching card game with rules that are never explained to you. If you want to play something like this, try it with a 2-year-old and some animal pictures in real life or something, it'd be much more fun. Is a game a platformer if it has platforms but you can't jump? Magic Jony, or Jony, is a little guy who saves the world by swallowing up monsters inside a giant tulip he carries with him. The game starts promisingly with several intro screens detailing the story. Because nutrition sucked by the huge monsters... Oh. Well, anyway, at least this one has a story even if it's unreadable. The game itself looks a lot like the original Donkey Kong. Sadly though, it's nowhere near as good. All you do is climb up and down ladders to reach cartoonish monsters and tulip them. The graphics are cute, with good animation compared to some of the other games we've looked at. Music is the usual one tune, but it's quite interesting. A complex piece played in a minor key that emphasises the fact you're in a wasteland overrun by weird monsters. There is one big problem, however, which drags the game's score down. It seems you progress by opening chests to find keys unlocking the next area, but I was unable to open the first chest. I tried pressing both buttons, then pushing the joystick up and down, then explored the whole area to find no other way to progress. The monsters respawn when you leave the screen, so I couldn't kill them all and move on. Sadly, it means I was unable to get any further and had to leave Magic Jony's quest unfinished. So that's episode 1 of Retro Marathon. If you liked the video, click like and subscribe to Nod to the Strange, and we'll see you next time.